welcome back to the Fundamentals of Investing. My name is Ryan Farley. I'm 16 years old. I go to a performing arts school in New York, and I'm an actress.
Hi, I'm Ryan Hobby. I'm 15 years old, and I go to a public school in New Jersey, and I am an actor and singer.
Hi, I'm Xavier Donaldson. I'm 15 years old. I'm in 10th grade. I go to a private school in New Jersey, and I run track and field.
Today we have Mr. Gary Stevens joining us. Thank you so much for coming. Mr. Stevens attended Winston-Salem University. He created the SMG Consulting Group. He's a basketball coach and a devoted husband. Mr. Stevens, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Can you tell us about yourself and SMG Consulting Group?
Sure. So I'll tell my story in the capacity of like how my life kind of like dictated me to where I am today. Okay. So I'm a native New Yorker. I grew up in the Bronx. Typical inner city stuff. You know, we were poor, but didn't know we were poor. You know what I mean? From there, my parents, my freshman year or towards the end of my 8th grade year, my parents bought a home in Englewood, New Jersey, which was like literally like 5 exits away from where I grew up at in the Bronx. And from at Englewood, I attended Dwight Morrow High School, where I was an athlete there. I was blessed and fortunate to earn a scholarship to Winston-Salem State University to play basketball. I played for the winningest Black coach in the history of basketball. His name was Clarence Big House Gaines. You check him out, he's in the Hall of Fame and everything. From Winston-Salem, basketball-wise, I said, you know what? It didn't really work out. So my high school coach, at the last minute, I decided to transfer to a school called SUNY Old Westbury in Long Island, just to play ball. And while I was at Westbury, I was like, you know what? Forget this basketball thing. Let me get my life in order and try to figure out what career path I'm gonna take. So I chose that I wanted to go to law school for sports and entertainment law. I wanted to be a sports agent. Okay. So when I was looking at Westbury's curriculum, it just didn't meet what I really wanted for the law part. So I transferred to John Jay College of Criminal Justice to get my degree in pre-law. So after graduation, I was fortunate. Like I said, I grew up in the Bronx with a guy, I know y'all too young to know this guy, but his name was Malik Sealy. He was a standout basketball player. He was a professional basketball player, NBA. Unfortunately, Malik died in a car accident attending Kevin Garnett's birthday party. But Malik played a significant role in my life, because when I stopped playing, Malik and I hooked up, and I told him I was studying to be a sports agent. So what he did, he said, look, I'm gonna put you in contact with my agent, who's on Tellum, which was one of the biggest agents in the game. I think right now he's like the vice president of the Detroit Pistons or something like that. And Malik was like, okay, I met with the agent. The agent said, listen, you know, what you want to do is negotiate contracts and stuff. That's not going to happen anymore. The athletes are going to, you know, have these scaled contracts that if you've been in the league this long, this how much you get. And that's how the structure is today. So he said, look, you need help. The athletes need help with work off the court instead of on the court. So I said, you know what? I'll take that into consideration. So Malik and I sat down, and he said, look, from this day forward, help me with my business affairs. You know, advise me. I said, okay, cool. So one of the first things he did, now, of course, we had some business ventures that was horrible. We failed miserably and stuff like that. So then one time he came and said, you know, let's get into this record industry. Let's do it. We know a lot of people in the music business. Let's do a record company. And I said to Malik, no, let's not do that. Let's do a recording studio so that if the company fails, we could sell the equipment in the studio and make some of the money back. Because in the music business, your revenues is based on the artist performance. So you could put out some money. If the artist doesn't perform, it's a wrap. So we created a studio called Baseline Studio. Now, if you do your homework, that was the home recording studio of Jay-Z. He did a ton of albums out of it. So from there, people started coming to me saying like, oh, how do you know, who advised you guys on this studio? And they go, oh, Gary did it. So everybody was calling me. And I'm like, wait a minute. I could get paid off of giving my advice to people. I was like, wow, this is quite interesting. So I still was advising athletes to music people and stuff like that. And I was getting paid from it. So I said, you know what? I'm going to build a business structure behind this. So in 2001, I created, the company started out as a company, Stevens Management Group. And then as it evolved, I picked up on so many other skill sets. I went back and got my master's in accounting and financial management, because when we was doing the studio, I was like, wow, if you understand the financials, you'll understand anything about the company. So I said, look, I like this. So when Malik passed away during the time we was launching the studio, that's when I went back to school, got my master's in accounting. And then I said, you know what, I want to test my skill sets and see, before I launch this company, are my skill sets really up to par? So I went and worked on Wall Street and started doing like technology mergers with companies. And I was like, you know what, this accounting thing is great, but I don't want to do it on the big scale because it's too much red tape and stuff. And I just love dealing with it, interacting with the client. So that's how I launched the business full time in 2001. And 2012, because I expanded the company to, not just giving advice on starting a business. We wrote the business plans. We started doing the accounting. We started doing the taxes for them. We started doing management consulting, going into their companies and telling them, this is what you're doing right. This is what you're doing wrong. We put the marketing plans together. And now we're about to launch a digital media division in the company. So I found myself doing more consulting, and I changed the name in 2012 to SMG Consulting Group. So for the past, almost 20 years, I've been advising people on how to start businesses, manage them, and grow them. I know that was a lot.
Yeah, that was a whole journey.
It started way before we were
very nice
born.
though.
Yeah. So, but that's how I got
Extremely
there.
impressive.
I appreciate that. But that just shows you that my life, I didn't dictate it. It wasn't something I knew I was going to get involved with from when I was in the Bronx. I didn't know none of that stuff, not even in college. So it fell in my lap.
That was
So you kind of just...
Sure, go ahead.
I was saying, so you kind of just went with the flow of what you were feeling in the moment, and that led you to the career that you're at now.
Absolutely correct. It was the feeling, because I always knew one of the things that I enjoyed was the one-on-one interaction with people. I enjoyed that. I thought the only way I could make a career with that was the lawyer aspect. But it turned out it was the accounting and the consultant aspect of it. And just my friends, some significant friends that I, along that path I ran into, was able to help me and, springboard into this thing and make it to where it is today.
That's amazing. Just hearing how it went from, nothing, and now it's this huge thing. That's amazing.
Right.
No, it's cool.
Real story of rags to riches.
Somewhat. We still working on the riches. We doing all right, though. We doing all right. We doing okay.
We're going to get there. That's all that matters.
No, we get there.
So you attended Winston-Salem University, which is obviously an HBCU. So how was that experience, and would you recommend, HBCUs over, non-HBCUs?
Well, I'll say this, I won't say about, I can't speak too much on the non-HBCUs because I really didn't have the full experience of it there. But I will say this, the HBCU experience is like no other. The reason why is because, you get a sense of self-pride being as a Black person. Our culture is different. We laugh louder, we party louder, we debate sports louder than anyone, so you go somewhere else where they're not accustomed to that culture, it could be misconstrued as something, as argumentative or something like that. But whereas in the HBCU, that's the norm. We party hard, we study hard. The other thing that I love about it was the relationships you build, one, and you get to see Blacks in different dimensions. Like I grew up in the Bronx. Everyone had that same path. There wasn't too many career-driven individuals in the area that I came up from. But when I got to Winston-Salem, it was eye-opening because I got to see rich, middle class, and the poor Blacks, and everybody's there for one common goal: have fun and, get that education, Like I said, for me, the relationships is unbelievable. Some of my closest friends today are my teammates from Winston-Salem State. And just a little fun fact, one of my teammates is Stephen A. Smith, the ESPN analyst. It's my guy.
Well, it sounds like it was a really good experience for you, and I think that that's something that everyone should at least look into.
Absolutely. I think every Black person should at least consider an HBCU. And now with Kamala Harris, running as vice president, and Howard's getting all of that, publicity, we might have some HBCU admissions increase.
Mm-hmm. I forget, we had another interview with another person that went to an HBCU, and he was saying exactly like something that you were saying. Like, you get to see Black people from all around the world, whether rich, middle class, poor, people that have been here for the longest, and people that just came here from Africa. It was like everyone that could just go to an HBCU, and it didn't matter where you came from, you would be understood, and you would have people who would support you no matter what. I'm not saying that you can't get that at a regular university.
Correct.
But at an HBCU, I've just heard that it hits different.
Yeah, it really does hit different. And I give y'all another example, actually two. One, like when you attending the HBCUs, yeah, you cool with everybody. You got your little clique and stuff like that. But it's when you come back, when you have those homecomings after you left, now y'all have this special bond. So homecoming is just completely different. People that you didn't really speak to when you attended the school, y'all love each other because y'all made it as adults now, and y'all share this HBCU together, So the homecoming piece coming back was a lot of self-pride. And then the second story I share is almost about a year ago, my friend Stephen A. Smith did a HBCU week on his show First Take, okay? So the ESPN producers reached out to us. They got in contact with some of his teammates and said, look, we want y'all to come on the show and surprise him, okay? So we said, okay, cool. So the guys are in a group chat, and we like, hey, listen, should we wear some Winston-Salem gear or should we wear our suits? So another friend of mine, he was my roommate, his name is Monte Ross. He's a Division I coach, basketball coach. Right now he's the associate head coach at Temple University. So Monte was the one that said, hey, we gotta represent. We gotta get suited. Let's throw on our suit. So we said, okay. So we went, we filmed it, we surprised him. Now here's where the self-pride came in. It was a group of older ladies that attended Winston-Salem. And when we walked off the stage, they pulled us to the side and said, y'all represented us so well. That's how you represent. And that is that self-pride that I don't know if another university can give it to you like that, or a non-HBCU, I should say.
Well, yeah, it just sounds like it's just this big explosion of Black culture, and you're making all these relationships with these people who you can relate to. It sounds
absolutely,
like a good time.
Absolutely. It was a great experience. It's definitely changed my life. I'll be honest with you. Winston-Salem State was the one. It was like when I got down there, I was like, oh my God, there's all kinds of Black people. It was cool. It was cool.
A lot of small businesses have been suffering because of this COVID-19 pandemic. How has your business survived with all that's happened?
Yeah, it's true. Like a lot of companies has been suffering through this thing. It's something that, you can't put in a business plan. It's something you can't predict. But for me, one of the things I teach my clients is, hey, listen, let's not just manage your business for now, manage it for the future as well, So for me, it had zero impact. Okay. And I'll tell you why. Back in, I don't remember the exact year, but we had that big hurricane Sandy. And I remember I couldn't get to my office. I couldn't get to my computers. I couldn't do no work. And I said to myself, wait a minute, man, you can't do this, because if I'm not working, it's not that I'm self-employed. I don't get a check every 2 weeks. So if I'm not able to work, that means I'm not able to eat and get no money. So when that happened, I actually started working on doing all of my stuff remotely. So I had all my stuff in the cloud after that hurricane. Most of my tax clients, I've never met them in my life. I know what they sound like. I know their families. I talk to them on the phone. Never met them. So I always was serving my clients remotely for almost 10 years now. So when COVID hit, for me and my business, it didn't change anything. In fact, my business, picked up because so many people were like, hey, listen, my revenue is done. Like, I lost my job. What do I do? So they call it me to help them come up with ways to create revenue streams, generate businesses. They call it for more financial advice. Should I tap into my 401k and stuff like that? So my business didn't change. If it did change, is one thing. Everybody and their mama now want a Zoom call instead of just picking up the phone.
That's so true.
It's like, hey, let's jump on a Zoom call. I'm like, look, this is the same call we've been doing for 20 years on the phone. We don't need to jump on the Zoom call. So that's about it for me. But there are companies that are suffering. But like we tell entrepreneurs, businesses may fail, but entrepreneurs don't. We always find a way to, recover, rebound, make adjustments, and keep it pushing.
Most of our guests talked about how to create wealth, but how do we maintain wealth? Like how can we create like a better legacy for ourselves? Like,
yeah, that's a great question. I always pose this question to clients. Tell me someone that you know that is considered wealthy, rich, or that you may know of, read about, see on television. Name one of those people that don't have their own business. So one of the things I teach is you build wealth through business ownership, because we live in a capitalist society. Everything is money driven. It's ownership. So if you don't have capital, how are you going to thrive or leave anything, So, the one reason I say businesses is just because that is the number one tax shelter in the world. And one of the biggest expenses, when y'all start working, y'all going to see these expenses. You're not going to like taxes, okay? You're not going to like taxes, okay? So one of the biggest expenses we all have as working adults is taxes. So how do we reduce that tax? Well, having a business allows you to reduce those taxes, okay? So that's one, is that we tell you to create that business, okay? Secondly, what we tell our clients, hey, listen, Now that you have this business, you got to acquire things that you could pass down, which is somewhat your legacy there. Okay. So you can't pass down your job. They're not going to hire your kids just because your parents work there or you work there. They're not doing it. So you need something tangible that could be passed down. So we talk about real estate, we talk about financial assets, and we talk about a business. So you got to be able, that's what we teach on creating wealth, is acquire something that you control and that you can control it to the point where you can pass it down to someone and to your family. And that's what legacies are based upon. Now as far as maintaining it, it comes down to discipline. If you're making $1 million and you spending $1 million, then you're not wealthy. So you got to be disciplined enough to know, hey, listen, I don't need all of this. Let me just, properly budget. And that's how you maintain it. So we help our clients. Believe it or not, adults need a lot of assistance with. So we help our clients with trying to help them maintain, the wealth that they're acquiring and working on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can give someone $1 million, but if they blow through it all in a week, what's the point?
What's the point? If you don't practice financial literacy and discipline, you won't make it. Like I tell people, if you are, a bum with no money and you hit the lottery, you still a bum. You're just a bum with money now. And eventually you're going to practice your bum habits and blow through that money. So at some point you have to change. You have to change and discipline yourself. Because without it, it ain't going to work.
Yeah, you have to be responsible with money. That's something I'm trying to teach myself now, because I'm used to just swiping my debit card everywhere I go. Anything I want, let me get my debit card. But now I have to like, all right, you don't need it.
Well, to be honest with you, let me just say this. Swiping the debit card is not a bad thing.
Really?
No, and I'll tell you why. Is now how often you swipe it might be the problem, okay? But swiping the debit card is not bad because you can always trace your spending habits.
That's true. So
if you budget in properly and then you look at your monthly spend and say, oh my gosh, I spent, $600 in Chipotle. That's insane. Like you will change that, But adults do that. When we go through their budget, we're like, hey, look, you spent, I had a client, true story. He was a music producer. He made $1.9 million in 1 year, right? So he sent me his bank statements. We prepared his financials. I said, hey, you made $1.9 million this year. He said to me, stop lying. Don't cook my books. Don't do nothing illegal. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is your bank statement you gave me. So we looked at his bank statements and he was like, wow, that's my advance. That's my royalties. And they added up to $1.9 million. He didn't even know he made $1.9 million.
Wow. So he didn't even know.
He didn't even know. And he was like, but I'm broke. And I'm like, because you're spending. Look,
it's gone. It's not here anymore.
Yeah, you bought the Range Rover. You built the house from the ground up. All that other stuff is gone now. But you made $1.9 million.
Exactly.
Right.
Ever since we've started on this podcast, it's made me examine my own spending habits because, I have my debit card and everywhere I go, swipe. Oh, I want this. I want to eat. I want clothes. I want this. I want that. But ever since, we've started this and the guests have come on here and they're, teaching us about financial responsibility and financial literacy and such, it's made me look at that and be like, okay, you got to calm down. I don't need everything I see.
Right.
It goes back to the music producer. You got that data to tell you what you're doing and you can analyze yourself, So in the business world, we call that key performance indicator, okay? So what's that KPI that says, okay, Ryan spent $600 in Chipotle. That's ridiculous. Let's change that, okay? Let's bring that down to $100 and take that $500 and save it somewhere. So like I tell people, you can have an expensive taste. You can have champagne taste. Just don't come with a bare budget to me. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You know, you want to be a millionaire with a welfare work ethic. That ain't gonna work.
Exactly. Yeah, I looked
Right.
through my, my bank statements, and they're like, "Oh, you spent $50 at McDonald's, $20 at Chipotle." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, now I know, so I won't I
Right.
won't do that anymore."
Right.
Right.
And that's a big advantage of technology. See, in my era, if we really wanted to be responsible, and I'm gonna tell you this, I was not that responsible. We just had cash. So if
Oh,
we walked out with we didn't have debit cards and stuff like that. So if we walked out with $50, you had to remember or keep the receipts on what you spent the money on if you was being responsible. I wasn't like that when I was your age at all. So don't feel bad. You just swiping, I was just handing over the cash.
so this one's a little bit heavier, but given the current situations in America, with systemic racism, police brutality, all of the terrible things going on, where do you see our communities in the next 10 years, and what advice would you give to our generation to create change?
That's a very difficult question.
Yeah.
And I tell you why, because the climate is so complex, there's no right answer. There's no right or wrong answer. And when you don't have a real right or wrong answer, it makes it a little bit more difficult, because we've protested before. Every generation had their protest era, but things still hasn't changed, especially within the Black community. We talking about the wealth gap between whites and Blacks is very significant. But what's the solution to that? If I throw my 2 cents in there, which I have been lately, is the Black community have to understand that we have to embrace the economics of this. We got to do better economically, because unfortunately America, like I said earlier, is a capitalist society. These politicians, to get them to do something, you need the money. Okay? That's just a harsh fact. Okay? And if you don't have the money, you just walking around shouting and yelling, we're gonna hear you for a minute. You're gonna bring some awareness, but what's the plan after? Okay? So for me, I think we have to do better economically, because now if we doing, collective economics, we could go buy our neighborhood instead of rent, because that's all we do as Blacks is rent. We don't own the buildings and stuff like that, But how do we get there? That's another dilemma. I think what I see personally is that we have to change our mindset. Blacks have to change our mindset to say, hey, we can do this, but we got to come together and cut out that, oh, he's doing it, then I'm not going to support him. I'm not going to support that. I need to be the head dude in charge and all of that stuff. You got to get that mindset out, Like, it's an old saying that it's okay being broke, but it's not okay to be poor. And that's a poor mentality. That, oh, broke just temporary. I don't have no money right now. You know what I'm saying? Poor is, I'm going to just stay where I'm at. I'm not trying to get better. I'm happy I'm alive. I don't need $1 million and stuff like that. Oh, that's their problem. But if we live in this world with economics, we gotta do better economics. So, I don't know if it's the right answer. Like I said, it's very complicated.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at it, economics is one of the things. Now, the second part to that question about what would I tell the youth, is another difficult thing, But what I would say is that, it's this saying I learned in college. I forgot the philosopher, but it resonated with me because it says, don't be a child to your parents. And in essence, what that means is that your parents did it their way for their benefit, okay? So your parents don't always have the right answer either. So you got to explore more out than what your parents are telling you or whoever's telling you. And I think that's applicable to today's youth. You know, we've been hearing all this time, go get your education and all this other stuff. But is the education worth it if you're coming out with a bill for $200,000-$300,000?
Exactly. Exactly.
You know? So I had a client, his son interned with me, and they saved $200,000 for his education. And the kid graduated and said, college is not for me. He wanted to start his own t-shirt business and all this other stuff. He had that hustle mentality. So they called me up and said, look, you know, he want to follow you and be an entrepreneur. He want to skip college. So I said, well, if y'all save $200,000, why don't y'all give him $25,000? If he flipped that to $1 million, would you be disappointed in your son? So, you know, that's something that I believe in, that, you know, you got to find your way. If I tell you, that's just what my limitations on what worked or what we did in our time. So explore more than what you could do that could help your community be even better. So, I mean, I don't know if that's the right or wrong answer, but, you know.
I don't think there is a right or wrong answer.
Right.
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 All right. One more question.
Sure.
Yep. We ask this question to all of our guests. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh man, let me think. I did think about that, right? And that's a hard question because I'm not a person of regret. I think everything happens for a reason in your life. So my little story I shared with y'all, you know, I gave you a condensed version, but growing up, you know, there's always growing pains and there's hardships and stuff like that.
Yes.
And I overcame that. So I can't say that I have regret. But if I was to answer that, I think the first thing come to my mind is, you know, make sure you enjoy the short-term misery for long-term happiness. So those experiences that I had that I thought was the end of the world at 15, 16, 17, and going further, and still now, you can still have some hardship. But it's like, you know what? If I can endure this, I'm okay. Let's just keep going, because at the end, I'm going to be happy. So all that stuff that I did, that the failed businesses, you know, making the wrong business decision, losing money and stuff like that, those were the short-term miseries that now I'm happy. You know, I'm running my own company. I'm doing it my way. Like I tell everybody, if you ask me how business is going, it's going great because I ain't in nobody else's office. You know what I'm saying? So that's, you know, I don't know if it's not the correct answer or the most appropriate, but that's something I would say, like, hey, look, don't worry, this is only a short-term thing. Trust me, you'll be happy later on in life with that. So that's pretty much it. Like, you know, what I tell myself. But like, if you was to ask me what I would tell, you know, the youth now, that's a whole nother show. You know what I'm saying? On things that was relevant to me. You know what I'm saying? That's just about it. Like, you know, I deal with a lot of youth as well, you know, and I just try to, you know, educate them on things that I went through, you know, and you know, I always think of 4 things, and it's something that I end with this, you know, there's 4 things I always tell people, you know, youth or adults. You know, 1, you got to find your passion. You got to know what you love. You got to have that, you know, that drive that what we equate that to is, what I tell people is, they say, well, what's my passion? I said, find that one thing that you could work on from 7 in the morning to 11 at night. And then at 11 at night, you realize you didn't even eat yet. You know what I'm saying? You didn't even eat yet. That's your passion. Now, once you find your passion, we can monetize that. We could put a business structure to that. Anything we can do. You know what I mean? So that's one. And I think in the second, I think I tell them it's 5 things I say. So one is find your passion. 2 is learn a little bit of a lot instead of a lot of a little bit. Now, like if you're going down the road of an entrepreneur, even let's say you want to be an actress, right? Learn, you don't have to be the lights guy. You don't have to be the expert on the lighting of a set, but understand that lighting person's role. You know, learn a little bit so you can have an intelligent conversation with them about that. You know, like I go to a doctor and the doctor say, oh, this, that, and the other. Well, you need to explain that to me. And I need to be able to understand why you said it. And then I'm going to fact check it with another doctor. And if something else is wrong, now I'm not a doctor, but now I go to that next doctor and can have an intelligent conversation because I learned a little bit of that. Okay. 3 is something that most people, you know, they get a little touchy with this, but y'all ever heard the what they say, don't drop the F word? Y'all ever heard that before?
No, I don't think I've ever heard that.
Y'all never, what's the F word? Anybody know when you say what's the F word?
Failure?
No. It's a curse word. It's a
curse
word.
That one. Yes.
That one. The curse word, right? They say, oh, watch the F-bomb. Don't drop the F-bomb.
Oh,
well, here's what I say. Be aware of the 2 other F words, and that's family and friends, because they are your first dream killers. They're going to set their limitations on you. You know what I'm saying? So you say, I'm going to be this big actress. You know, you might have to, it might not be your parents. It could be a sibling. It could be a cousin. You know, it could be your friend. So if you could endure that, those other F words, then when you start making it, the real haters that don't know you, you'll be all right. You could just take them off because your family and friends is your first line of love, unconditional love. And they don't mean a bad, ill intent. They just setting their limitations on you. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? The other is always be relevant. Number 4 is always be relevant. Okay? And what I mean by that, being the best is a matter of somebody's opinion. But if you put your work in and you committed to that work and you doing the best you can at that and you good at it, when you relevant, you're in the discussions of who's the best. So basketball player, we can say who's the best basketball player. Everybody gonna have their own different opinion. But they was relevant to be in that discussion. And the last,
to be considered, yes.
Yes, to be considered. So you got to put that work in to say, okay, I'm going to put my best into my work. So I'm relevant to be in the conversation of being the best. And the last one I always tell people, treat everybody with respect. Because you just never know when you need someone. Like my story, and I say that, Malik Sealy and I grew up in the same building. He went to be an NBA player. He helped me become an entrepreneur. You know, don't people I go down to Winston-Salem to see? My people in Englewood, New Jersey. Matter of fact, one of the guys I went to high school with is my lawyer. Okay? So treat people with respect because you never know when you can be able to use them. You know, so as they say, treat the janitor with the same respect as you would treat the owner, the CEO of the company. So, like I said, I don't know how to give advice for myself when I was younger, but those are the 5 things I would give to the young today.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Stevens, thank you so much for joining us. It has been such an amazing time to have you here. Please come back anytime you like.
Sure, anytime y'all
We'd
call,
love to have
I'm
you
here.
back.
Anytime y'all call, I'm here. Anything. All right? And keep doing what y'all doing because this is necessary. And when you talk about changing the community, this is how you do it. You know? The one thing you guys have that money can't buy is y'all got your time. You're young. You know what I mean? I can't buy the age of 16 again. All right? So keep doing what y'all doing. I'm proud of y'all.
Well, thank you.
All right?
Thanks.
All right. Y'all be well now. Take care.
You too.
You too.
All right.
Okay, everyone, this has been the Fundamentals of Investing. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure you tune into the next episode.
Peace.
Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Hailstorm LLC, produced by Jalen Hobdy.